The morning Walter Croft almost walked into the wrong car was the morning everything in his life began to change, though he would not understand that until much later, standing in a hospital corridor with a paper cup of cold coffee and a heart full of something he had not felt in years. It was a Tuesday in early November, the kind of grey Toronto morning that settles over the city like a wool blanket left out in the rain. Heavy, damp, smelling faintly of lake water and exhaust. Walter had already been on 2 calls before 7 a.m. He was 53 years old, chairman of Croft Aldine Financial, a man whose name appeared on buildings and donor plaques, and the occasional charitable gala program that he attended for exactly 45 minutes before slipping out the side door. His driver, Douglas, had called in sick. His assistant, a young woman named Preethi, who had lasted 14 months and was therefore already his longest-serving assistant in a decade, had arranged a car service instead. Black sedan. Plate ending in 7. Waiting at the King Street entrance. Walter came through the lobby at speed, the way he always moved. Exactly, but with a kind of aggressive efficiency that made people instinctively step aside. He had his phone to his ear, half listening to a voicemail from the Vancouver office, his other hand already reaching for the door handle of the black sedan idling at the curb. "Don't get in that car." He stopped. The voice was small but certain. Not panicked, certain, the kind of voice that does not expect to be argued with. He looked down. A girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, was standing on the sidewalk beside a rusted grocery cart piled with a sleeping bag, 2 canvas bags, a dented thermos, and what appeared to be a large stuffed rabbit missing one eye. She was wearing a man's fleece jacket, 4 sizes too large, the sleeves rolled up twice, jeans that had been patched at both knees with fabric from what looked like an old plaid shirt. Her hair was brown and tangled, and she had been crying recently, though she had stopped, and her eyes were dry and level and looking directly at him. "Excuse me?" Walter said. "That's not your car," the girl said. "Yours is behind it. That one's been sitting here since before I woke up. The driver's been on his phone the whole time. He keeps looking at the building across the street." Walter looked at the sedan, then at the black car idling 2 lengths behind it, a driver standing beside it holding a small sign. He looked back at the girl. "How long have you been here?" he said. "Since about 5:30, she said. It was not a complaint, it was just a fact. He took the second car. He did not look back at her until they had pulled into traffic. Then he turned and watched her through the rear window. This small, serious person standing beside her grocery cart on King Street, the city moving around her like water around a stone. She had already stopped watching him. She was doing something with the thermos, shaking it, checking if anything was in it. He looked away. He had a meeting at 8. He made the meeting. He made 4 others after that. He ate lunch at his desk, which was a habit his doctor had told him to stop, and which he had no intention of stopping. He read a report from Tokyo. He signed 3 letters. He did not think about the girl. Except that he did. At 2:15 he told Preethi he was going to step out for air, which was something he had never said before in his life, and he walked back to King Street. She was still there, not in the same spot. She had moved along to the sheltered side of the building, where an overhang kept off the worst of the wind. She was sitting on the sleeping bag with her back against the wall, and she had the stuffed rabbit in her lap, and she was reading an actual book, a thick one with a cracked spine, held open with both hands. She did not look up when he approached. "You're still here," Walter said. "I live here," she said, not looking up from the book. "What's your name?" She considered this for a moment. "B," she said, "short for Beatrice. My mother named me after the constellation." She paused. "I know that's not how you spell it. Where is your mother?" B closed the book. She looked up at him with an expression that was old for her face, not sad exactly, but careful, the expression of someone who has learned to measure how much to tell and to whom. "She's sick," Bea said. "She's been sick for a while. She's not here right now because she thought I'd be safer on my own for a couple of days." "Safer." "There was a man in the shelter," Bea said simply. "He was bothering people." Walter sat down beside her on the sleeping bag. He was wearing a suit that cost $4,000, and he sat down on a sleeping bag on King Street without thinking about it, which surprised him later when he did think about it. "How long has your mother been sick?" "It got bad in August," Bea said. "Before that she was managing. She had a job at a laundry on Dundas, but when she got sick, she couldn't do the shifts anymore, and then we couldn't keep the room. She said all of this in the same even tone, as if reading from a document. She's not lazy, I want you to know that. She worked every day I can remember. I know, Walter said, though he didn't know anything of the sort, and somewhere underneath the word he felt ashamed of how automatically it had come out. She has pneumonia now, Bea said. She went to the clinic on Monday. They wanted to admit her, but she was worried about me. Where is she now? She went back today. She said she'd go back today. Bea picked at a loose thread on the rabbit's ear. I'm waiting. Walter looked at this child, this careful reading, rabbit-carrying child sitting on a sleeping bag in November, and something moved in him. Not pity, exactly. Something older and quieter than pity. Something that felt uncomfortably like recognition. He called Preethi. He asked her to find out which clinic on Dundas would have seen a woman for respiratory illness on Monday. He asked her to do it now. While he waited, he said to Bea, "Are you hungry?" "I'm all right," she said. "That's not what I asked." She looked at him for a long moment. "A little," she said. He bought her a sandwich and a hot chocolate from the cafe 20 meters down the street, and while she ate, methodically, not fast, which told him she had been taught to eat properly and had not forgotten, he sat and waited for Preethi to call back. The city went on around them. A streetcar went by. A man with a dog stopped to look at the grocery cart and then moved on. Bea watched everything, the way children do when they have learned that watching is its own kind of preparation. Preethi called back in 11 minutes. The clinic on Dundas West. A woman matching the description Walter gave. He had asked Bea, had been seen Monday and again that morning, and had been transferred to Toronto Western with an acute respiratory infection and a fever of 103. Bea was watching his face when he got off the phone. She went back, Bea said. Like she said. She did, Walter said. She's at the hospital. She's being taken care of. Something passed across Bea's face, relief, and grief, and something that was neither, a kind of exhausted unclenching. She pressed her lips together. She did not cry. She just breathed. "Can I see her?" she said. "Yes," Walter said. "Come on." She folded the sleeping bag with surprising precision, tucked the rabbit under her arm, and gripped the handle of the grocery cart. Walter looked at the cart. He thought about calling a car. He thought about what it would mean for a child who had been living on King Street for an uncertain number of days to leave her only possessions on a sidewalk. "The cart can come," she said. They took a cab because it was faster, and because Walter did not know how to flag down something that would take a grocery cart, and so he simply told the driver to open the trunk and tipped him substantially, and that was that. The hospital was the particular controlled chaos of a Tuesday afternoon. Gurneys in the corridor, a television turned to a talk show in the waiting area, the smell of antiseptic and something fried from the cafeteria 1 floor down. A nurse at the desk looked up when Walter approached with Bea and the cart and said, "Can I help you?" in the tone that means, "I am assessing whether you belong here." "Her mother was admitted today," Walter said. "Respiratory. Her name is—" He looked at Bea. "Helen Calloway," Bea said. Then, quietly to the nurse, "Her last name is Calloway. Mine's different. My dad left when I was little." The nurse's face did something small and involuntary, not dramatic, just the flicker of a person who has heard that sentence before and still finds it cost something to hear. She typed. She nodded. "Room 312, she said. "She's stable. She's been asking about her daughter." Bea walked down the corridor ahead of Walter, following the numbers on the doors, the rabbit tucked under her arm, the cart left with him at the nurse's station. She stopped outside 312. She put her hand on the door. She stood there for a moment, gathering something, the way people do before they walk into a room where someone they love is lying in a hospital bed. Then she went in. Walter sat down in a chair in the corridor. He did not follow. This was not his moment to be in. He sat and listened to the muffled sound of a child's voice on the other side of the door, and then a woman's voice, lower, and then what might have been crying, and then silence of a different quality. The silence of two people holding onto each other in a room. He thought about his own daughter, Margot, who was 26, and lived in Vancouver, and called him on his birthday and at Christmas, and sometimes in between when she was lonely, and who had stopped expecting him to call first somewhere around the time she turned 16. He thought about her mother, his ex-wife Catherine, who had told him at the end that the trouble with Walter was not that he was cold, it was that he saved his warmth for transactions, for moments when warmth got him something. He had argued with her then. He did not argue with her now. not even in memory. He was still sitting in the corridor when the door opened and Bea came out. She sat down in the chair beside him. She put the rabbit in her lap. "She looks terrible," Bea said. "She's sick," Walter said. "But she's in the right place. She feels bad about me being outside. I told her I was fine." Bea was quiet for a moment. "I mostly was fine." "You were very fine," Walter said, and meant it. Bea turned to look at him. Her expression was direct, which he was beginning to understand was simply how she looked at everything. "Why are you still here?" she said. "You had places to be, I could tell." Walter thought about this. "I don't know," he said, and then, because it was the truest thing. "I think you reminded me of something I'd forgotten to think about for a while." "What thing?" "That most people are doing their best," he said, "and that it's easier to assume they're not." Bea considered this with the same seriousness she gave everything. "My mum says that too," she said. "She says assuming the worst about people is lazy." "Your mum sounds like she's worth listening to." "She is," Bea said. "She's the smartest person I know. She used to be a bookkeeper." Walter asked what she meant before, and the story came out in pieces the way stories do when the teller is young but not naive. A job lost in the pandemic. A sublet ended abruptly when the landlord decided to sell. A sequence of small disasters that had no single villain and no obvious point of intervention, just a slow accumulation of bad luck falling on a person who had no cushion left to absorb it. Helen Calloway had been a careful woman with a decent job and a small apartment and a daughter she was raising on her own, and then she had been a woman standing on the outside of all of those things looking in, and the distance between the two was not as large as Walter had always unconsciously believed. He had believed it was large. He had believed it the way comfortable people believe things they have never had reason to question, with the quiet certainty of someone who has never needed to test the assumption. Sitting in a hospital corridor in November with a 10-year-old and a stuffed rabbit and a grocery cart at the nurse's station, Walter Croft felt the assumption give way beneath him, not dramatically, not with revelation, just with the dull ache of something long overdue. He spoke to the doctor that evening. Helen Calloway was being treated for bilateral pneumonia, moderately severe, but was responding to antibiotics. She would need 2 to 3 weeks of hospital care, possibly more, followed by a period of recovery. She was malnourished. She was exhausted in the way that people get exhausted when they have been managing a crisis alone for too long. Walter went back to the room. He knocked. He stood in the doorway, and Helen Calloway looked up at him from the bed, a woman perhaps 40, with Bea's same careful eyes and the particular hollowed-out look of someone who has been surviving on willpower and not much else. Bea was sitting in the chair beside the bed, holding her mother's hand. "Mr. Croft," Helen said. Her voice was rougher than he expected, scoured by the infection. "Bea told me what you did. I gave her a sandwich and a cab ride," Walter said. "You stayed," Helen said. "That's not nothing." He told her he had spoken to the hospital about the costs. He told her he had a contact at a transitional housing organization that placed families coming out of crisis, and that he would make a call in the morning. He told her both of these things carefully, because he understood, because Bea's expression told him that this was a woman who had been offered help before and found conditions attached to it, or pity in it, or something that made accepting it cost more than refusing. "This isn't charity," he said. "I have more money than I will ever use, and I have spent 30 years giving it to things that have my name on them. This doesn't need my name. I'd rather it didn't." Helen looked at him for a long time. "Why?" she said. Walter glanced at Bea, who was watching him with her head slightly tilted, the rabbit pressed against her chest. "Because your daughter told me which car was mine," he said, "and I think I owe her one." Something shifted in Helen's face. Not relief, or not only relief. Something that was almost amusement. "She does that," she said. "She pays attention." "She does," Walter said. "It's a good thing to do." He came back the next day, and the day after that. He did not come with gestures or announcements. He came with coffee for Bea, and once with a collection of books from the shop on Queen Street, and once just to sit in the corridor and work on his laptop, while Bea read in the room and Helen slept. He did not examine his reasons too closely. He understood, vaguely, that examination might make it complicated, and that uncomplicated was what this needed to be. On the 4th day, he brought his phone and showed Bea the website for a school in the Annex neighborhood. A good school with a decent library and a music program and teachers who were apparently, according to the parent reviews Walter had read at midnight the night before, the kind of teachers who remembered names. He told Bea that if her mother agreed, and if Bea agreed, he could speak to the admissions office. Bea looked at the website for a long time. "They have an astronomy club," she said. "They do," Walter said. "Beatrice is a star," Bea said. "My mother told me. In the Boots constellation." She said it the right way, BOOHTs, and he realized she had been looking it up. "I know," he said. "It's one of the oldest named stars in the sky." She looked at him with an expression that was startled and then quickly composed, as if she had almost let him see that it mattered. "She'll have questions," she said, meaning Helen. "I'd expect nothing less," Walter said. Helen had questions. Walter answered them. Some of them he answered honestly, including the one she asked on the 6th day, when Bea had stepped out to get water from the machine down the hall. She asked him what he actually wanted from this. She asked it quietly but directly, because she was Helen Calloway, and she paid attention the same way her daughter did. Walter thought about it. He thought about Margot in Vancouver and Catherine's voice at the end, and the $4,000 suit, and the 45 minutes at charitable galas. He thought about the black sedan he had almost gotten into, and the small, certain voice that had stopped him. "I think I want to be useful," he said, "in a way that actually does something. I've been writing checks to things for years, and I don't know what any of it changed." He paused. "I'm not saying you owe me the opportunity to feel better about myself. You don't. If you say no to everything I've offered, I'll still make sure the hospital bills are covered, because that's just—" He stopped. "Because that's just the right thing." Helen was quiet for a long time. Outside, the hospital went on around them, the PA system calling a name, a cart going past in the corridor. "She's never had stability," Helen said. "That's the part that keeps me up at night. Not the money, not the rest of it. Just, she deserves a bedroom that's hers, a school where they know her name." "Yes," Walter said, "she does." "She's going to go very far," Helen said. "She was reading before she was 4. She argues like a lawyer, and she never forgets anything." There was something fierce in it, and something frightened, and something that was just love, the specific love of a parent who sees their child clearly and is terrified of the world failing to see them the same way. "I know," Walter said. "I can already tell." 3 weeks later, Helen Calloway was discharged from Toronto Western. She was not recovered. Recovery was going to take months, and Walter's contact at the housing organization had been honest about that, but she was stable, and she was going to a clean apartment with a bedroom for Bea and a window that looked out over a courtyard where someone had planted a small garden, now bare, but, the superintendent said, quite something in spring. Bea walked through the apartment very methodically, checking each room, opening each cupboard. She went to the bedroom that was going to be hers. She stood in the middle of it and looked at the walls. "I could put up star maps," she said. "You could put up whatever you like," Helen said from the doorway. Walter stood in the hallway, coat on, keys in hand, not quite in the apartment and not quite out. Bea came back out of the bedroom and looked at him. "You can come in, you know," she said. "You don't have to stand in the hall." "I didn't want to intrude," he said. "You're not intruding," Bea said. She said it with the same matter-of-fact certainty she said everything, as if the question had a correct answer and she simply knew what it was. "You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we're here," Walter said. "You're the one who paid attention." Bea considered this for a moment, which she always did, weighing things. "We both did," she said finally. "You just needed reminding." Walter took his coat off and hung it on the hook beside the door, the one that already had one of Helen's scarves on it. He stayed for dinner, which was soup and bread that Helen made, sitting down because standing still tired her, and which Bea served with the seriousness of a small professional. They ate at the kitchen table. The window was dark by then, the courtyard invisible, but the light inside was warm and the soup was good, and outside above the city, the stars were there, even if the clouds kept them hidden. He called Margot that night from the car on the way home. She picked up on the 3rd ring, surprised. He never called, not first, not late on a weekday. "Dad," she said, "is everything all right?" "Yes," he said. "Everything's fine. I just—" He stopped, tried again. "I just wanted to call." There was a pause. He heard her settle, heard the particular sound of someone lowering their guard carefully, not wanting to hope too much. "Okay," she said. "I'm glad you did." He told her about Bea. He told her about the car he had almost gotten into, and the small certain voice, and the rabbit with the missing eye, and the books on Queen Street, and the astronomy club. He told her about standing in the hallway, not quite in and not quite out, and being told there was room. Margot was quiet for a moment when he finished. "You stayed," she said. "I did," he said. "That's not nothing," Margot said. The same words Helen had used, and he felt them the same way, like something arriving just slightly later than expected, but arriving nonetheless. "No," Walter Croft said, watching the city go past outside the window. "It's not nothing." He looked up at the sky out of habit, though there was nothing to see but the low orange glow of cloud and streetlight that covers Toronto most nights in November. Somewhere above it, he knew, the star Beatrice held its position in the old constellation, patient, named, exactly where it had always been, waiting to be looked at by someone who finally had reason to look.